walk into the church, you dip your fingers in the holy water, you genuflect, perhaps quickly, perhaps carelessly, and you slide into the pew. You look around. You notice who is there. You notice who is not. You notice the woman who arrived late again, the family whose children will not stop moving, the man dressed as though he came directly from mowing his lawn. And in that small, quiet, almost invisible movement of the soul, something happens that most Catholics never suspect. A sin has already been committed, and it will follow you all the way to the communion rail. It will sit beside you during the consecration. It will stand with you when you rise to receive the body and blood of Christ. And it will walk out of the church with you, unnoticed, unrepented, and unhealed. This is the hidden sin. It is not dramatic. It is not scandalous. It does not appear on any list your conscience automatically consults before confession. And yet it corrodes the interior life of countless souls who attend Mass every Sunday of their lives. Most Catholics never see it. Most Catholics never name it. Most Catholics carry it home like a splinter that slowly festers beneath the surface of an otherwise pious life. If you feel that your prayer has grown cold, that your Sundays feel empty, that grace seems to slip through your fingers, you must listen carefully. Because what I am about to describe may be the single most overlooked wound in the soul of the modern Catholic. Before we name it, understand this. The devil is a strategist. He is not interested in obvious sins committed by souls who already know they are lost. He is interested in the small, respectable, invisible sins committed by souls who believe themselves to be safe. He hunts those who kneel. He targets those who receive. He whispers most persistently to those who are convinced they are doing everything right. And nowhere is his strategy more refined than at Mass, because at Mass the greatest possible good is offered, and therefore the greatest possible theft can occur. The hidden sin that many Catholics commit every Sunday at Mass is the sin of interior judgment fused with spiritual pride. It wears many masks. It sounds pious, it sounds concerned, it sounds like discernment, but it is neither charity nor discernment. It is the quiet elevation of the self above the neighbor in the very moment when the soul is called to kneel lowest of all. And because it happens in the mind, in the shadow of the heart, in the space between a glance and a thought, it is almost never confessed. It is almost never noticed. It is almost never healed. Let us define the issue precisely. Interior judgment at Mass occurs when the soul, upon entering the sacred space, begins to evaluate, categorize, criticize, and rank the other souls present according to appearance, behavior, posture, dress, reverence, family conduct, or perceived worthiness. Spiritual pride enters when this evaluation carries with it, even subtly, the sense that one's own presence, one's own reverence, one's own manner of worship stands above that of the others. The two vices intertwine like ivy around a dying tree, and together they hollow out the very soul that believes itself most alive. Now consider the cause. Why does this sin arise so frequently at Mass of all places? The answer is not accidental. The soul at Mass is standing before the highest reality it will ever encounter this side of eternity. It is standing before God made flesh, present upon the altar. And when the soul stands before something so vast, so holy, so overwhelming, it experiences a hidden pressure. It feels small. It feels exposed. And the fallen nature, which does not wish to be small, immediately seeks a way to reassert itself. The easiest way for the fallen nature to feel large is to make someone else feel smaller. And so the eyes drift. The mind catalogs. The heart quietly rises above others in order to escape the discomfort of standing beneath God. This is the spiritual mechanism. Pride cannot tolerate humiliation, and the true worship of God is, by its very nature, a humiliation of the creature before the Creator. So the soul that has not been trained in humility will almost automatically generates small acts of comparison in order to protect itself from the crushing weight of divine majesty. It is a defense mechanism of the fallen self against the presence of the holy. The Pharisee in the temple is not an ancient figure. He is alive in every parish. He kneels in every pew. He may be kneeling in yours. He may be kneeling in mine. And here is where many will begin to recognize themselves. Have you ever entered a church and immediately felt superior to the person in front of you because their clothing seemed inappropriate? Have you ever watched a family with restless children and thought silently that they should have prepared them better? Have you ever seen someone receive communion and wondered, in the back of your mind, whether they should be receiving at all? Have you ever compared your genuflection, your posture, your reverence, your knowledge of the liturgy to that of the person beside you and felt, even for a moment, a quiet satisfaction? If so, you have touched the hidden sin, and you are not alone. Multitudes touch it every Sunday and never realize they have done so. Most Catholics assume that as long as the external actions of the Mass are performed correctly, the interior life is safe. This is a grave misunderstanding. The Mass is not merely an external ritual. It is an interior event. What happens inside the soul during the Mass matters as much as what happens outside it. A soul that kneels perfectly while judging others interiorly is, in that moment, offering a divided worship, and divided worship over time produces a divided soul. Now consider the consequence. What happens to a soul that habitually commits this hidden sin? First, its capacity to receive grace at Mass diminishes. Grace is received in proportion to the disposition of the soul, and a proud, judgmental disposition is one of the least receptive dispositions possible. The Eucharist is offered fully, but the soul takes back only fragments, because pride occupies the space where humility should have opened wide. Over weeks, months, years, the soul comes to Mass, receives communion, and yet grows spiritually thinner. It does not understand why. It concludes that the liturgy is dry, or that the priest is uninspiring, or that the parish lacks vitality. It never suspects that the problem is within itself. Second, the soul begins to develop a false interior identity. It sees itself increasingly as the standard by which others are measured. Its judgments harden into convictions. Its convictions harden into contempt. Contempt is a spiritual acid. It eats through charity. It eats through patience. It eats through the very love of neighbor that Christ commanded as the second great commandment. And a soul without charity, no matter how orthodox its beliefs or how impeccable its external practice, is, in the words of St. Paul, a clanging cymbal. Third, and most dangerously, the soul becomes vulnerable to a specific kind of demonic influence. The demons that specialize in religious pride are among the most patient and most skilled. They do not tempt such souls to obvious sins. They confirm them in their judgments. They whisper agreement. They flatter the intellect. They cultivate the sense that the soul is a defender of tradition, a guardian of reverence, a remnant of the faithful, while quietly hollowing out its interior life. Many souls who consider themselves the most serious Catholics are, in fact, being led step by step into a pharisaical spirituality that Christ himself condemned more sharply than almost any other sin. Let me pause here, because someone listening will already be resisting this teaching. Someone will say, but is it not right to notice irreverence? Is it not right to be grieved by liturgical abuses? Is it not right to desire that others approach the Eucharist with proper preparation? Yes, all of these can be legitimate concerns, but there is a difference, an infinite difference, between the sorrow of charity and the satisfaction of pride. Charity grieves for the other and prays for the other. Pride notices the other and secretly congratulates itself. The former draws grace down upon the whole parish. The latter poisons the soul that harbors it. Examine which one lives in you. think of the battlefield. That is the metaphor we will carry through the rest of this teaching. The Mass is a battlefield, not because there is chaos there, but because there are forces present that most souls never perceive. The angels are present, the saints are present, Christ is present. But so also are the fallen spirits, prowling the edges of the sanctuary, watching for openings, seeking to steal what grace they can from souls too distracted to defend themselves. On this battlefield, the sin of interior judgment is like a soldier who turns his weapon away from the enemy and points it at the man beside him. The enemy loves this. The enemy needs no strategy against a soldier who is already destroying his own ranks. Consider the parable Christ himself gave us. 2 men went up to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, and notice the precision of the sacred text. He prayed with himself, not with God. God, I thank thee that I am not as other men are, extortioners, unjust adulterers, or even as this tax collector. And the tax collector, standing afar off, would not so much as lift up his eyes unto heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God be merciful to me, a sinner. Christ tells us that this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. Every Sunday, this parable is being lived out in your parish. Every Sunday, souls leave the church either as the Pharisee or as the tax collector. The external posture may be identical. The interior reality could not be more different. Now understand something crucial about the spiritual life. The devil does not need to make you commit a mortal sin to render your worship fruitless. He only needs to divide your heart at the moment of offering. A divided offering ascends weakly. A pure offering ascends powerfully. This is why the saints, who understood this principle deeply, guarded their interior senses at Mass with extraordinary vigilance. Saint John Vianney would arrive at the altar with the recollection of a man walking into a burning furnace. Saint Padre Pio wept through the Mass because he saw with his own eyes what was truly occurring. These men did not have time to catalog the sins of their neighbors. They were too occupied with the majesty of God and the poverty of their own souls. Here is a hidden cause that many never consider. The habit of judging others at Mass often originates in an unhealed spiritual insecurity. The soul that is not deeply rooted in the love of God feels unstable in His presence. To stabilize itself, it grasps for external comparisons. It measures itself against others in order to feel it belongs, in order to feel it is doing well, in order to feel it is not the worst one there. This is a wound, not merely a vice. And like all wounds, it must be healed, not merely condemned. The remedy is not to hate yourself for having judged. The remedy is to understand why you judged and to seek the healing of the deeper wound beneath the surface behavior. Consider now the practical example. A man attends Mass every Sunday for 20 years. He is faithful. He is knowledgeable. He is what many would call a good Catholic. But over those 20 years, he has developed the habit of noticing, of comparing, of quietly evaluating. He does not gossip. He does not slander. He does not speak these judgments aloud. But they live inside him like a second liturgy running parallel to the true one. He receives communion each week. He goes to confession occasionally. He confesses the sins he knows, but this sin he does not know, because it has become so habitual that it feels like clarity rather than sin. And after 20 years, he wonders why his prayer feels dry, why his family life feels strained, why his patience has grown thin, why God feels distant. He does not know that a small, unnoticed wound has been bleeding within him for 2 decades. This is the shape of the spiritual battlefield. Small wounds, ignored, become mortal wounds in time. And the greatest tragedy of the spiritual life is not the soul that falls dramatically. It is the soul that erodes silently, week by week, in the very place where it should be strengthened. Let us now speak of the remedy, because I do not wish to leave any soul in despair. There is a way out. There is always a way out. Grace is more powerful than any vice, and the Sacred Heart of Christ is more merciful than any pride. The first step is recognition. You cannot heal what you will not name. Before the next Mass you attend, make a firm interior resolution to observe your own thoughts as you enter the church. Notice where your eyes go. Notice what your mind says. Notice the small judgments, the small comparisons, the small elevations of self. Do not fight them yet. Simply see them. Bring them into the light of consciousness. Most souls have never done this. Most souls are astonished at what they find when they finally look. The second step is confession. Once you have seen this pattern in yourself, bring it explicitly to the sacrament. Do not confess it vaguely as, I have judged others. Confess it specifically. I have judged others at Mass. I have compared myself to those around me. I have taken interior satisfaction in feeling more reverent, more knowledgeable, more prepared than my neighbor. Specificity in confession draws down specific grace. Vague confessions receive vague healing. The devil loves vague confessions because he can hide in the gaps. The third step is the deliberate cultivation of interior humility before Mass. Before you leave your home, spend even 2 minutes recalling who you are and who God is. You are a creature. You are a sinner. You are utterly dependent upon the mercy of God for every breath and every grace. If God were to weigh you strictly, you would not stand. If He were to examine you as you examine others, you would be undone. This is not morbid, this is truth. And truth is the ground on which humility grows. A soul that enters the church with this recollection has already disarmed the enemy's primary weapon. The fourth step is what the spiritual masters call custody of the eyes. This is not merely a physical discipline. It is an interior discipline. When you enter the church, direct your gaze forward toward the tabernacle, toward the altar, toward the crucifix. Do not scan the pews. Do not survey the congregation. Do not evaluate the arrivals. Let your eyes rest on Christ, and let your mind rest with your eyes. This single practice, if pursued faithfully for 1 month, will begin to transform your experience of the Mass more than you would believe possible. The fifth step is intercessory prayer for those present. When you find yourself beginning to judge another soul in the pew, immediately convert that impulse into prayer. Lord, bless that soul. Lord, have mercy on that family. Lord, sanctify this parish. This is a spiritual jitsu, if you will permit the phrase. You take the energy of the temptation and redirect it into charity. Over time, the impulse to judge weakens, and the impulse to intercede grows in its place. This is one of the most powerful transformations a Catholic can undertake, and it happens quietly, invisibly, over months of faithful practice. The sixth step is Eucharistic focus. When the moment of consecration arrives, gather every faculty of your soul and place it upon the altar. There is nothing else in the church. There is nothing else in the world. There is only Christ becoming present, offering Himself to the Father, offering Himself to you. If your mind is on the family 3 pews ahead, you have missed the mountain because you were staring at a pebble. The saints understood this. They fell silent in body and soul at the elevation because they knew what was occurring. Train your soul to fall silent as well. Now let us speak of the spiritual benefit. What happens to the soul that begins to heal this hidden sin? First, the Mass comes alive. It ceases to be a routine and becomes an encounter. The dryness lifts, the distance closes. Grace begins to flow into the soul in a manner it has not experienced perhaps for years. Second, charity grows. The soul begins to love the very neighbors it once judged. It begins to see them not as objects of evaluation, but as fellow pilgrims, wounded as it is wounded, struggling as it struggles, in need of mercy as it needs mercy. Third, prayer deepens. The soul that has learned humility at Mass carries that humility into every other moment of its life. Prayer at home becomes richer. Prayer in trials becomes stronger. Prayer in temptation becomes more effective. The whole spiritual life is elevated because its foundation has been rebuilt on truth. Fourth, and this is a benefit few speak of, the soul becomes a source of grace for others. A truly humble soul at Mass draws down grace not only upon itself but upon the entire congregation. This is the mystery of the communion of saints operating in real time. Your interior state affects the spiritual atmosphere of your parish more than you know. A single deeply recollected soul can be a channel of grace for hundreds. A single proud, judgmental soul can be an obstacle to grace for many. Do not underestimate the weight of your interior life upon the life of the Church. Consider now a warning that must be given. There is a particular danger for those who love tradition, who love reverence, who love the beauty of the liturgy. Such souls are especially targeted by the demon of religious pride because they see clearly what many do not see. They can begin to believe that seeing clearly is the same as being holy. It is not. A soul can perceive every liturgical abuse with perfect accuracy and still be far from God. A soul can love the traditional Mass with all its heart and still commit the sin of the Pharisee. Perception is not sanctity. Preference is not virtue. Even correct theology held with pride becomes a wall between the soul and God rather than a door. I say this because I have seen it. I have seen souls who possess vast knowledge of the faith yet are unable to love the simple people who kneel beside them. I have seen souls who could quote every rubric yet could not extend a moment of patience to a fellow parishioner. And I have seen the opposite. I have seen simple souls with little theological knowledge whose interior humility drew down torrents of grace that shamed the learned. God is not impressed by our knowledge. God is not impressed by our preferences. God is drawn to humility as water is drawn to the lowest place. If you wish to be filled with grace, become low. If you wish to be exalted, kneel. There is another dimension of this hidden sin that must be addressed, and it concerns the reception of Holy Communion. When a soul approaches the altar to receive the body of Christ while harboring judgment against a fellow member of the body of Christ, a peculiar spiritual dissonance occurs. Christ cannot be fully received into a soul that is closed against his other members. This is not a technical rule, it is a mystical reality. The Eucharist is the sacrament of unity. To receive it while interiorly divided from the community is to receive it against its very nature. The grace of the sacrament is impeded. The union with Christ is diminished. And the soul walks away carrying less than it could have carried. St. Paul warns of this when he speaks of eating and drinking judgment upon oneself by not discerning the body. This discernment is not merely the recognition that the host is truly Christ. It is also the recognition that the Church, the members gathered around the altar, are truly the body of Christ. To despise them, even interiorly, is to despise Him. To judge them harshly is to judge Him harshly. This is a fearful teaching, but it is the teaching of the Church, and it must be spoken plainly. Let me offer one more example, because concrete examples fix truth in the memory more firmly than abstract explanations. A woman I once knew attended daily Mass for many years. She was known in her parish as a devout woman, but she carried within her a quiet contempt for the pastor. She believed him too lax, too modern, too accommodating. Every Mass, her mind was occupied with cataloging his failures. She received communion from his hands every day while interiorly rejecting him. After many years, she began to experience a profound spiritual darkness. She could no longer pray. She could no longer feel the presence of God. She went to a wise confessor who listened patiently and then asked her a single question. "Have you loved your pastor?" She was silent for a long time. And in that silence, she began to weep. The healing of her soul began at that moment. Not because she had committed a scandalous sin, but because she had committed the hidden sin day after day at the foot of the altar. You may not have a pastor you disdain, but perhaps you have a neighbor in the pew whom you have quietly condemned. Perhaps you have a family whose noise you have resented. Perhaps you have a fellow parishioner whose politics, whose appearance, whose manner has become for you a source of interior distance. Whatever the specific form, examine it, bring it into the light, confess it, and begin the work of healing. Now I wish to speak to those who feel discouraged as they hear this. Perhaps you recognize yourself in every word. Perhaps you feel that you have wasted years of masses, that grace has slipped through your fingers, that you have offered divided worship for as long as you can remember. Do not despair. This is precisely what the enemy wishes you to feel. Discouragement is his second weapon. Pride was the first. If he cannot keep you in pride, he will try to plunge you into despair. Resist both. God is not counting your failures. He is waiting for your return. The prodigal son was not asked to justify his years of wandering. He was clothed, embraced, and fed. The moment you turn back, the Father runs to meet you. This is the gospel. This is divine mercy. This is the Sacred Heart of Christ, which beats not with judgment, but with an infinite readiness to forgive. Every Mass is a new opportunity. The one you attended last Sunday, whatever you brought to it, is past. The one you will attend this Sunday is a fresh beginning. Bring to it a humbled heart. Bring to it a resolution to guard your interior senses. Bring to it a willingness to see yourself as the tax collector rather than the Pharisee. And you will discover that the same Mass in the same church with the same people becomes an entirely different reality, because the Mass was never the problem. The disposition was. Consider the Desert Fathers who fled to the wilderness in part to escape the temptation to judge others. They understood that the soul in company is constantly tempted to compare, and they knew this comparison poisoned the spiritual life. You cannot flee to the desert. Your desert must be interior. When you sit in the pew, create a desert within you. Let the others fade. Let the noise soften. Let your soul become a solitary cell before the tabernacle. In that interior desert, God will meet you. In that interior silence, grace will pour in. There is one more remedy I wish to offer, and it is perhaps the most powerful. Devotion to Our Lady, especially through the Rosary, is a specific antidote to the sin of interior judgment. Mary is the humblest of all creatures. She never judged. She never compared. She never elevated herself. When you pray the Rosary daily, you are asking her to form your soul into the shape of her own. Over time, her humility becomes yours. Her charity becomes yours. Her recollection becomes yours. And the interior life at Mass is transformed because the soul that enters the church is no longer merely your own. It has been shaped quietly and steadily by the Mother of Christ. Ask Saint Michael also to defend you from the demons of religious pride. This is not a small request. It is a serious petition against a serious enemy. Ask your guardian angel to guard your thoughts as you enter the church, to redirect your gaze, to prompt your prayer. The angels are not decorations. They are warriors. They are servants. They are ready to help any soul that asks. Most Catholics never ask. Begin to ask, and you will begin to see their work. The battlefield of the Mass is not primarily around you. It is within you. The most decisive victories of the spiritual life are won in the small interior movements that no one else ever sees. A humble thought, a silenced judgment, a converted glance, a whispered prayer for the neighbor you were about to criticize. These are the small victories that accumulate into sanctity. These are the small victories that the saints won, one Mass at a time, one day at a time, one hidden movement of the soul at a time. If you take nothing else from this teaching, take this. The greatest obstacle to your growth in holiness is almost never what you think it is. It is not usually the dramatic sin. It is not usually the obvious failure. It is the small, hidden, respectable sin that you have been committing for years without noticing. It is the interior judgment. It is the quiet pride. It is the subtle elevation of self above others. Find it, name it, confess it, heal it, and your entire spiritual life will begin to change. The Mass is the greatest treasure entrusted to the Church. It is the representation of Calvary. It is the wedding feast of the Lamb. It is heaven touching earth. To attend it week after week and receive only fragments of its grace because of a hidden sin is a tragedy greater than most Catholics comprehend. But it is a tragedy that can end today. It can end at the next Mass you attend. It can end the moment you decide to enter the Church as the tax collector rather than the Pharisee, as the servant rather than the judge, as the beggar rather than the critic. Christ is waiting for you at the altar. He does not care what the family 3 pews ahead is wearing. He does not care whether the woman beside you knows the responses. He does not care whether the man in front of you genuflects correctly. He cares about you. He cares about the state of your soul. He cares about whether you will finally let go of the small, hidden pride that has been separating you from Him for so long. He is ready. The question is whether you are ready. Kneel this Sunday as though it were your first Mass. Kneel as though it were your last. Kneel as the sinner you truly are before the Savior who truly is present. Do not look sideways. Do not evaluate. Do not compare. Look forward. Look upward. Look inward. And receive what has been waiting for you all along. The soul that learns this lesson becomes a different Catholic, not louder, not more visible, not more impressive to others, but deeper, quieter, more rooted, more filled with the peace that surpasses understanding. Others will notice, though you will not seek to be noticed. Grace will radiate from you, though you will not know it radiates. This is what the saints looked like in their parishes. They were often unremarkable to the eye. They were often overlooked. But they were the true pillars of the Church, holding up the world by the humility of their hidden prayer. Become one of them. It is not too late. It is never too late. Grace is offered fresh at every Mass, and the soul that receives it in humility will be transformed beyond what it can imagine. If this message has helped you see something you had not seen before, share it with someone who may need to hear it. There are countless souls attending Mass this Sunday who will commit this hidden sin without ever knowing they have done so. A word from you, a shared reflection, a quiet conversation may be the means by which grace reaches them. The communion of saints works through us as well as around us. Be a channel, be a witness, be, in your own small way, a light on this battlefield. And when you kneel this Sunday, remember, Christ sees your heart, not your posture, not your clothing, not your knowledge, your heart. Give Him a heart that has been swept clean of hidden judgment, and He will fill it with a peace and a grace you have not known in years. This is the promise of the gospel. This is the mercy of the Sacred Heart. This is the transformation that awaits every soul willing to see the hidden sin, name it, and let it go. May the Blessed Virgin Mary form your soul into her humility. May Saint Michael defend you from the pride that hunts you at the altar. May your guardian angel guide your thoughts as you enter the Church. And may the Sacred Heart of Jesus receive you, heal you, and hold you close every time you come to Him at Mass. Go now and begin.